I call to order the June 2025 meeting of the Special Committee on Student Affairs of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thanks for those who are joining here in the room, as well as those on the live stream or on Zoom. Let me welcome our student representatives for today. In person, we have Student Representative Jocelyn Sturm from the Twin Cities campus. And soon we should have Natalie Useche from the Rochester campus on Zoom shortly. With that, we'll turn straight into our agenda. Item 1 will be student support services. This is for discussion. Throughout the year, we've discussed a lot of specific student support services, but this presentation will be to discuss, I guess, everything else we didn't get to and how that's handled differently on each campus. Vice President Phillips, would you like to introduce this topic?
Thank you, Chair Kenyanya and members of the committee. Our first item today will highlight a variety of support services that we offer as resources for students. These services are essential to the success of our students as they navigate our campus and surrounding communities as first-year students, international students, first-generation students, or individuals with disabilities, to name a few. Joining me for the presentation are Heidi Anderson-Isaacson, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Life on the Rochester campus, and Maggie Tao, the Senior Associate Vice President for Student Affairs here on the Twin Cities campus. I now turn the presentation over to Maggie Tao.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Phillips, Chair Kenyanya, and members of the committee. We are excited to share information about some of the student services we provide to the students across the University of Minnesota. As you may recall, the student affairs portfolios aren't always apples to apples. Each campus has their own unique services that support specific student populations, such as student parents and students with disabilities. We will also highlight some of the strong academic partnerships we have across the University of Minnesota. I wanted to briefly highlight that our funding sources are a mixture of student services fees, O&M funds. We do receive some gifts, grants, and donations, and in some cases, the Department of Education funds some of our programming. First, I'd like to highlight the Wellness Care Team in Crookston. With the increased student mental health needs of their students, they have established a network of collaborators across the campus who can address the holistic needs of students who face crises and other barriers to success. In addition, a case manager is able to assess any student risk and coordinate with appropriate faculty or staff to provide necessary support. While this individualized approach is a significant strength in Crookston, the care team is still developing strategies to make certain that they can connect with their online student population as effectively as the on-campus students. Crookston introduces new students to their campus through their Student Orientation, Advisement, and Registration Program, otherwise known as SOAR, which consists of 2 parts. The first part includes online informational modules regarding academics, student success, and wellness and navigating life at Crookston. During part 2, they meet with an advisor where they talk through their goals and learn the process to register. Benefits of the program is students can go at their own pace, and registration is super accessible as it eliminates the need to be physically on campus. Incidentally, this program was developed during COVID-19, and it's been very successful, so they continue on with that. So I will now turn it over to my colleague, Heidi.
Excellent, thank you so much. Disabilities services on college campuses have been integral to providing access to education for students who might otherwise not be as successful pursuing their academics. Not only is the technology to support our students improving, we are also more aware of the invisible disabilities as a society and thus in tune with what kind of support a student with a particular diagnosis may need, whether that is a quiet space to take an exam, a note taker, extended time on assignments or tests, just to name a few. Duluth prides itself on the service and support they are able to provide to their students with a variety of diagnosed disabilities. Just attending college in a new country is daunting and stressful, but adding the immigration and visa adherence process to that transition just adds another level of stress to the experience. In addition to the logistical aspects of traveling abroad, the International Student Services staff are also dedicated to not only developing a sense of belonging amongst the international student population, a population in which they already have something immediately in common, but also to the entire campus. The Duluth staff are excited to highlight the positive ratings they have received from their international student population, demonstrating their dedication and commitment to these students. TRIO is a program funded by the U.S. Department of Education and has been integral in enhancing student success for many of our historically underserved students, such as low-income students, first-generation students, and students with disabilities. The TRIO program at Morris focuses on relationship building and orientation, a SS section of a common course taken by all new students, which covers skill and knowledge building content to assist students in the transition to college. TRIO programs have demonstrated their success with improved retention and graduation rates of the students they support. For Morris, they also experienced an increase in student engagement on campus, which positively influences student retention. Community service and engagement not only gives students a sense of purpose and an opportunity to serve others, it also supports the larger communities in which we live, learn, and engage. We want to be good partners and neighbors to the broader communities in which we reside. A partnership between student and academic affairs, the Clifford J. Benson Center for Community Partnership offers students the opportunity to extend their learning through volunteer service, co-curricular leadership, employment, community-engaged learning academic courses, internships, and research opportunities. Morris students specifically focus on small rural towns in the area to bring their skills, support, and vibrancy to contribute to and build thriving communities. Here you can see the Morris students engaged in their local community. These images show student volunteers planting seeds to the Stevens County Community Garden, preparing community meals, and cleaning up one of the Morris area parks. Student success coaches are a student's go-to resource on the Rochester campus. This practice, designed with our population of students in mind, provides a point of contact for the student during their entire UMR academic journey. The coaches not only provide academic support, but they also provide career and personal development coaching. The students develop deep relationships with their coaches, and coaches often know everything about a student, which proves to be helpful when they need a little extra support socially and academically. When I interviewed on campus, one student said, "My success coach has been so helpful to me that I wish I could take her with me after I graduate." No better compliment than that. Also on the Rochester campus, there is no such thing as office hours, eliminating the intimidation factor of walking into a faculty member's office for help. Instead, the faculty go to the students. Several areas of campus are designed as just ask spaces where faculty are ready and waiting to help students in large, open study lounges. Our classes are flipped classes where students learn about a topic prior to class so that they can actively engage in the learning with their peers while they're in the classroom. Often a group of students studying the same topic will gather in the just ask spaces to get pre-class help and support from their faculty to ensure they are ready for not only the active engagement in the classroom, but whatever may come their way on an assignment or an exam. A cross-collaborative approach is unique in that one faculty member will be able to assist students in a variety of classes.
Student Legal Services on the Twin Cities campus supports students by addressing their legal issues and answering any questions so those issues don't interfere with their academic success. 52% of their cases are related to tenant-landlord issues, mainly related to leases or delayed construction projects. We are extremely proud to note that the Student Legal Services saved students more than $1.8 million on lease-related issues during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. With the current national climate, we have expanded Student Legal Services access to all campuses and students who are in need of immigration support. We currently have over 500 open cases related to immigration support, and from this past January 21st through May 1st, we have opened 145 new immigration cases. Last spring semester, we had 66 cases, therefore an increase of 120% over last year. The Student Parent Help Center at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities provides comprehensive services to pregnant and parenting students and is one of the oldest and largest parenting student programs in the country. This slide notes the many services, events, and advocacy the office does for our student parents. Due to time constraints, I won't go into more detail, but I hope you noted the extensive third-party evaluation conducted by Wilder Research, which confirms that our supportive services have a significant impact on cumulative GPA retention, persistence, and graduation rates for pregnant and parenting adults. I do want to note that many of our student parents and their children march in the annual homecoming parade, and it's our hope that those little children will eventually become University of Minnesota student graduates from one of our 5 campuses. This concludes our presentation, Chair Kenyana and members of the committee, and we welcome any questions or reflections you may have from the information we've shared with you this afternoon.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Before we turn to discussion, I do want to acknowledge Senior Associate Vice President Towell that this is your last board meeting. She's retiring after a remarkable and long career here at the university. What was the number?
45 plus.
45 plus years. And I will say, Senior Associate Vice President, long before I met you here and interacted with you, I think just in the way your colleagues spoke about you, specifically Dr. Lisa Irwin, when you trust people, people they trust, I mean, that's kind of extended. So just the way she spoke about collaborating with you left a good impression, and that was validated when I had the opportunity to do so here. So thank you for your service and to the university, but specifically to the countless students that have passed through our university over that tenure. Vice President Phillips, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah. Maggie Town has served the university, as we mentioned, over 45 plus years. She started at the university when C. Peter McGrath was president, followed by 7 more presidents.
Yeah, I remember him.
Maggie's tenure included decades of leadership in student unions and activities, co-chair of the President's Initiative of Student Mental Health, and most notably, 3.5 years as the interim vice provost for student affairs. She has selflessly served as leadership and was consistently called upon when administrators were in need to get things done. Personally, I'll miss Maggie. Thoughtful counsel, her humor, her ability to solve many of our toughest issues, all in support of students. We wish you the best in your retirement, Maggie.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Kenyana and Vice President Phillips. I just want to note that I landed on this campus when I was 19 years old and never left. So it's been my honor to serve the University of Minnesota. It's been an absolutely fantastic career. So thank you for your recognition. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and it's been our pleasure. And in the, I guess, similar vein, Heidi Anderson Isaacson, I think you're new to the university and just joined us at 2 months. 2 months, okay. Well, welcome to the university, and
Thank you.
We're glad to have your service for the next 45 years as well. And with that, we will turn to discussion. Any discussion or questions or comments on the presentation you had? I'll start as questions kind of percolate. This is helpful kind of as a way to end the committee because, as you put it, it's not one-to-one in terms of where services sit. And I think in our conversations, as you dig into that, it starts to make sense why at this campus it makes sense to have this over here where that's not how we do it over here. It's not that there's a right way, it's how do we serve students. And I think that without getting lost in the hierarchy and whatnot, I just go back to what we've talked about earlier. I think with some of the other services we talked about, these have direct outcomes in the academic outcomes, in the well-being. So it's not just this extra thing over here. You might not always be able to track and say, our graduation rates went up by X%, but we do know that correlation absolutely exists as the services are delivered and delivered more widely. So that's, I'm grateful for that. I guess I would ask, what is it's a broad question, but I mean, what would be the challenge? I know there's more than one, but right now, okay, in student affairs, AVP Towell, after 45 years, right? As you head into a well-deserved retirement, what's that thing you're like, gee, I wonder how this is going to get addressed in student affairs, right? I wonder how this is going to be handled over the next decade. What's that one thing?
Well, Chair Kenyana, that's a really, really good question, because there's so many things right now with student mental health on the rise.
Right.
And then just given the political climate right now, it's a good question. I think protection of free speech is something I think I would like to see us continue, and just continuing to increase our services to support students with mental health issues. And I will say, I think student affairs is, well, we have many unsung heroes in this institution. I spent with facilities management this morning and land care, and they all do such wonderful work. But I have to say, we have a lot of offices across the system that are half a FTE or one FTE. I mean, our parent and family program is one person. We're working with thousands of families that are enrolled at the university. So I do think I would love to see us get more support. I know I'm not supposed to ask this to the Board of Regents ever, but I'm on my way out. So I'm on my way out. So you might see me down at the state legislature when I'm retired. But I do think that really, the faculty are super important. They're here to educate our students, but I do think without all of the really hardworking staff that we have behind the scenes doing some of the really messy work sometimes, I think, we really retain a lot of our students that are the most challenged, and I don't know if our staff gets a lot of recognition for that. So I guess that's my thoughts.
Yeah, that's helpful. Anything to add?
Yes, Chair Kenyani, I think the one thing that I'm most concerned about is that we've done a lot of research into student success initiatives and what our students need in order to be successful in college. And my concern is the lack of federal funding for some of those programs in order to support those students. So that's a big one that's on my mind right now, and how the funding for students, especially our low-income students, will be affected with changes potentially with federal financial aid.
Thank you. I have a follow-up, making sure, okay. A number of these services are, and we have student service fees, actually, the next presentation, but a number of these come out of there. Looking at what's on this list, and outside this list, just all of student affairs and student support, does some of that get, if VP Tonneson was here and again, we're looking at her budget, does some of that fall in that administration pie chart, that taboo word these days? And I suspect some of it does. I just want to highlight that this is what some of that work is, right? I mean, am I correct in that understanding that some of what we just group as administration is direct student support?
Yes, that would be accurate.
Yeah, short answer. That's good. Yeah, I mean, no, I just want to call that out, and because I think it's not imprudent for us to talk about how we can be more efficient. I think I've been one of those voices in terms of administration, but we have to get a little more granular when we talk about that, and even the other stuff that is more traditional administration. We talked about Region for Healing and audit this morning. Compliance is, equally important, and often us as regents are the ones asking for things that create more of that. Okay, well, seeing no other discussion, I'll turn it over for any kind of closing comments before we move to the next item.
No, Chair Kenyani, thank you for this opportunity, and yes, you can fire me now because I asked for more funding. I did want to clarify too, when you talk about administrative bloat, I mean, again, you might see me down at the state legislature at some point, because we have administrative staff here that work 24/7 supporting our students and really go above and beyond. None of us work 40 hours a week at all. We're responsive 24/7. So And I know that's the narrative out there in the papers today about all the administrative bloat, but I have to say, the work we do is really on the ground to support our students. And if we didn't have the staff in student affairs, we'd probably lose a few, don't you think, Heidi?
Absolutely.
So anyways, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for the service, and thank you for the presentation. All right, with that, we will turn to item number 2. This is an overview of the student service fees. This is for discussion as well. Vice President Phillips, would you like to introduce this topic?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Kenyanya and members of the committee. As you're aware, the university assesses a fee for student services on each campus. Assessment of this type of fee is consistent with funding practice at many colleges and universities. The fee supports essential elements of our student-university experience that have become expectations by students and parents. Student service fees support student centers, recreational centers, health and wellness services, including mental health services, and student activities, and organizations, to name a few. These programs and services foster a sense of community among students, support their health and well-being, and provide assistance when they face challenges. Today, we'll share details about how the student service fee is assessed, specific services it supports, and how student learning and feedback are integrated in the fee allocation process for our campuses. Joining me for the presentation are David Israel Swenson, Senior Director of Student Engagement and Wellbeing on the Morris campus, and Heather McGinnis, Chief of Staff and Director of Operations for Student Affairs on the Twin City campus. With that introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Heather.
Thank you, Vice President Phillips, Chair Kenyanya, and members of the committee. Dave and I are happy to be here with you this afternoon to talk about student services fees and their significance to our work in student affairs. As part of today's presentation, we're going to begin with a quick refresher on the board and administrative policies that govern and guide the fee. We'll then dive into details of how the student services fee is broken down and allocated on the campus level, and identify the individuals and groups who benefit and receive funding. We'll also share details about the role that students play in fee allocation, along with the learning and growth that happens by virtue of these positions. The programs and services supported by the fee are not only essential to student learning and success, but are also an incredible value when compared to the costs for individual services in the community. We will provide examples to support these points. Lastly, we will explain our process for regular and ongoing review of the procedures and guidelines, with a focus on the experiences of students who are involved in the process and how they provide feedback. You may recall that Vice Presidents Phillips and Tonneson visited the board's Mission Fulfillment Committee last year with proposed changes to the board policy on tuition and fees that stemmed from a comprehensive system-wide policy review. The most significant change to the tuition and fees policy was the incorporation of governance elements of the Regents policy on the student services fee. This shift brought together 2 Regents policies related to the charging of tuition and all fees into one single policy for simplicity and clarity. These changes received board approval in June of 2024. The revised policy on tuition and fees also updated the criteria on how the student services fee is assessed to students. Previously, off-campus distance classes were excluded from the credit count for determining who is charged the fee and eligible to receive its services. To better reflect the changing nature of course delivery and remote delivery of programs and services that have historically been campus-based, it was decided that we will no longer exclude credits for off-campus distance classes from the credit count used to determine the assessment of the fee. Students are charged the fee each semester and receive access to all the programs and services that each campus offers. They cannot choose to pay for a subset of services based on their interest, usage, or personal viewpoint. We did retain the practice for campuses and colleges to request an exemption from paying the fee for those students enrolled in annually approved, fully online, or mid-career professional credit earning programs. A full list of exemptions is included in your docket materials. On the other side of the coin, students who aren't assessed the fee but wish to do so in order to attain access to the services are able to opt in and pay at any point in the semester. An administrative policy on the student services fee was created to address the non-governance level elements of the former board policy. The policy identifies the universal practices that each campus utilizes to administer the fee. While campus-specific procedures vary and are individually linked in the policy establishes that at minimum, all campuses will have a committee made up of a student majority. They'll establish and publish an allocation process and a criteria for decision-making applied in a viewpoint-neutral manner, and have a process for appeals. Each campus employs at least one student affairs staff member to support the administration of the fee and who trains and advises student committee members. The overall analysis shown on this slide provides a comparison of the fee to both the cost of attendance for residential students and the university's total budget. The point here is that the fee is small but mighty. While the fee itself is just a small part of the overall cost of attendance and the university's overall budget, the benefits students receive far outweigh the costs. Students who need to hire a lawyer, seek the help of a psychiatrist, or even join a gym for annual membership would pay far greater rates outside the university. These services are available in convenient and accessible locations on our campuses and often have wait times that are much shorter than providers in our community. Dave will talk more later about the specific activities, programs, services, and facilities that are supported by the fee. Here, we want to draw attention to the impact of our collective offerings. As Vice President Phillips mentioned, students and families have come to expect robust support services, co-curricular options, and state-of-the-art facilities on our campuses. The fee allows us to support a broad assortment of offices, professional services, and facilities that foster student engagement through employment opportunities and student group leadership, as well as provide community gathering and activity spaces on our campuses. The existence of these resources gives families and students a sense of support and security, no matter what their individual needs might be. Another bonus is that the individuals administering these resources are specifically trained to work with college students, whether they serve as an on-campus job supervisor or a mental health counselor. I'll now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Dave Israel Swenson, who will share with you additional information about how the fee enhances the experience of our students.
Thank you, Heather. The Minnesota Omnibus Education Bill of 2017 made several changes to how the student services fee is managed and reported. The bill defined 4 classifications for fee-funded services and set a cap of 2% on the student activities fee. The 4 classifications defined in legislation are health services, encompassing all health service programs such as Boynton Health here on the Twin Cities campus, administrative units, which we will detail more in the future slides, student activities fee, which funds student clubs and organizations and cannot be increased by greater than 2% without a referendum of the student body annually, and debt obligations for significant construction or renovation projects related to student life. The best example we could give you for this was the renovation of the Kaufman Union. Administrative units make up a large portion of the fee and provide financial support for significant numbers of student-focused programs and services across our campuses. Most of the presentations you have seen about student affairs prior to this presentation, including today, have highlighted administrative units and services that are student services fee funded. All of these units provide services to meet the needs of our students and help them succeed and flourish on our campuses. We know that overall wellness and a sense of belonging are strongly tied to retention and student success. Resources supported by the fee on all of our campuses, such as health services, student unions, and recreation centers, provide opportunities for our students to actively engage in their own development, which enhances their overall well-being and provides a sense of purpose and belonging for our campus communities. Care coordination and case management services provided by the fee also aid in student success and retention by assisting students in navigating challenging situations and unfamiliar structures and environments. Services by units such as Student Legal Services, the Student Conflict Resolution Center, or the Aurora Center provide crucial support for students at times when they may be at their most vulnerable. Our campuses include a plethora of communities that bring students together and allow them to develop a sense of connection and belonging. Some fill important advocacy, governance, and communication roles, such as student government associations, newspapers, and radio stations. Others, such as Morris's Bad Movie Club, Duluth's Bulldog Foosball Club, or Crookston's Swing Dance Club, may seem frivolous to some, but provide valuable opportunities for students to connect and engage with each other. The Student Services Fee Recommendation or committees on each campus provide valuable resources for all of these groups to assist them in meeting their missions and create engaging campus environments for all of our students across the system. In the student affairs profession, we talk about the student union as the laboratory of citizenship, where students put into practice the things they learn in the classroom in a real-world environment with their peers. Nowhere, in my opinion, is this more on display than in the student service fees processes. The critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving that go into the creation of a funding request that will be reviewed and heard by a fee committee is akin to the process of grant writing. Engaging in this process as a student leader can have profound impact on an individual's development of communication and leadership skills, or introduce them to career opportunities or directions they may never have thought of. Discussing finances and requesting financial support can feel uncomfortable to students. The opportunity to work through those processes and learn how to navigate them is a tremendous opportunity for growth and development for a student leader who may not experience anything like that in a classroom and may prove to be valuable in their future career. Students who have the opportunity to serve on our committees also gain valuable experiences which enhance their personal and educational development beyond the classroom. Working together to review funding requests, helping guide their peers through the request process, and making decisions about how funds are best used to impact the most students on each campus align with key learning outcomes for a university education. Dan Moore, a vice president of the fundraising software company Mighty Cause, chaired the Morris Committee in 2007 and 2008. Dan credits this experience for his successful career in fundraising, and I will point out that Dan has remained an active alumni, serving as the Morris Alumni Association president, and is a strong supporter of and donor to the university. Student group applicants and students who serve on the committees are able to provide feedback on the request processes and campus procedures. Because the processes across the system are student-run and student-focused, the student leaders involved are never shy about sharing their thoughts and feedback about the strengths of the process or areas where we can better meet their needs. Student leaders from groups submitting requests are able to meet with a staff member or a committee member for assistance with the request process. These interactions provide great opportunities for discussion of best practices, and feedback provided during these meetings regularly leads to process changes and improvements. Every year, administrative units receive feedback based on their requests and are expected to address this feedback in future submissions, which is also an avenue for student feedback on our processes and services. As a demonstration of the learning that comes from participating in these processes, we have assembled testimonials from student leaders on many of the campuses. The statements you see on these slides are abbreviated, and full statements from the student leaders as well as others are included in your docket materials. Students who shared their thoughts indicated that their involvement with these processes has been valuable in their experience on campus. They highlighted that they value the hands-on experience they received as applicants and as committee members, the transparency involved in our processes, and to quote Taiwo Oremu, a graduate student on the Twin Cities and chair of the student representative to the Board of Regents, the opportunity to lead with purpose. Students shared that they appreciated how participation on the committees allows them to learn where their money goes, and that our processes allow student voices to truly influence how student life is shaped on our campuses. Some of our administrative units shared testimonials they've received from students who have utilized programs and services funded by the fee. These students expressed thanks and appreciation for support that was provided by staff who helped them to navigate difficult circumstances and structures on and off campuses, and in some cases, saved lives. This concludes our presentation. Chair Kenyanya and members of the committee, we welcome any questions or reflections you may have from the information we have shared with you this afternoon.
Thank you for the presentation. This ties in well with obviously finance and ops this morning, with the student support services we were just discussing. And this morning I alluded to the meeting we had with the student reps, and this also did come up, so I think just great timing. Apologies, great timing overall to be having this discussion. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Yes, Student Representative Sturm.
Yes, thank you, Chair Kenyanya, and thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering if you could elucidate a little bit why Morris's percentage of total cost for SSF fee is so much higher than the other campuses.
Director Israel Swenson.
That's a really interesting question and a good question. Sorry, Representative Sturm. Morris, being one of the smallest campuses in a very remote environment, does tend to have higher fee costs because we have a number of challenges and don't have services that are available in the community. When we look at like mental health support, we established a relationship with Boynton to provide telepsychiatry support for our students a few years ago, because we were seeing that the wait to see a psychiatrist in our community was often 6 months or greater. Our students are incredibly engaged on the Morris campus, and the Fees Committee has worked really hard to make sure student groups felt supported and felt they had the resources, because they didn't have as many community-based opportunities for engagement and involvement beyond what they were able to create themselves on the campus.
Follow-up, Student Representative?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Director Israel Swenson, you mentioned the 2017 bill, and that was actually the good version of that outcome was the best, compared to what was being proposed at that time. I remember trying to build support to not, among students, because I think the initial proposal seemed like a good thing, but it kind of put us in this mode of realizing we need to communicate out what SSF is and what it does, and making sure students understand that, because I think it is susceptible to that kind of attack of, well, I don't use the ice rink or whatever, so. Memories. That was the focus of our student lobby days back then. I've always appreciated how SSF is student-centric, majority students on every campus's process is a little different, but that majority piece, and it shows, and I think the students on there do take it seriously, and I think those are tough at least at UMD. That was a tough meeting to go into. We spent a lot of time as student government preparing for SSF, and that dual purpose of also then enriching the people serving on there. That's a really great point that I hadn't initially thought of. So my question, because of all those good things I just said about SSF, it could be volatile, right? Because that student committee does, I don't think it has been in the past, but they do have that ability to, go in a different direction as depending on how proposals are. I remember one thing that I know SSF, or at least the students on there struggled with, is there's a high bar set for kind of the quality of the presentation, the fiscal responsibility, and sometimes that wasn't met, but then you don't want to cripple this really important student service, they kind of wrestled with that. I guess, how have you seen those interactions and the stability of SSF? Because I mean, again, we're talking about clubs, but there are units that do, rely on some of their budget from there, and those are FTEs probably. Has that continued to be pretty stable?
Thank you for the chair. Thank you for the question, Chair Kenyanya. You are very right that, the 2017 process was quite interesting and was an experience to work through. But I think getting to your question, yes, it can be very volatile, and I think it's often a challenge to educate the fees committee on each campus about what services are fee funded, why those important. And so working through that process is very educational, I think, for the members of the committee. Finding ways to provide that for the rest of the student body is also a fun challenge, because I think the more everyone understands it, the better I think everyone is able to appreciate the services they're providing and what they're getting for the fees they're paying. I will say the Morris Fee Committee spent a lot of time last year working through whether they were going to run a student referendum to increase the activity fee by greater than 2%. Ultimately, they decided not to for the 25-26 year, but the committee is going to resume those discussions in the fall, looking at the 26-27 year. So what they ultimately, I think, recognized, and I think comes to answer your question, is that providing the education for the entire student body to understand this and why it's important is the challenge, and that in some ways that 2017 bill, we came out with a great outcome, but I think it did teach us that we need to think about some of that, and helping broader student body understand these issues is really important.
Can I add one thing, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I thank you, Dave, for that. On the Twin Cities campus, I think to highlight a little bit more about the committee and their interaction with groups that are coming before them for funding. Over time, we've increased the amount of opportunities that student groups have to request. So there are 10 different deadlines throughout the course of the year. So if a student comes in first time and don't have the right information, or they haven't thought through a specific for the event, then they receive counsel and advice from the committee, and then they can come back once they kind of work through some of the details that they might have missed. And that's been a change over time. So I think it's more of an educational process as well, and not a one and done. So if you don't meet these, then this is, then we're sorry that, there's not funding available for you. That's based on feedback that we've heard from students over time as well. And so just wanted to highlight that we do recognize that can be intimidating to come and request to this committee that, has a lot of responsibility to allocate the money. So wanted to share that as well.
No, that's helpful context. And adding on to that, being familiar with the UMD process, there the student government makes a request, a large request, and then they run their own mini SSF. Maybe we're a little less intimidating to the, depending the magnitude. The lettuce eating club does not need to go to SSF. Very true. I mean, they get a lot of their lettuce donated from the grocery store, and then they make a small request. They don't need to go in front of SSF. So student government asks for this large pot and then runs a smaller SSF, and then some of the larger organizations go there. So I do like just that flexibility and, making sure it's appropriate for the need. And then to Director Israel Swenson, I mean, to what you were talking about, that fits in with this morning Student Representative Moreno's comment on talking about tuition, and the value and at the touch points, right? And I think it might be easier with student service fees, because at the event or at the rec center, hey, this is how much of each of you paid $5, to this, I mean, or whatever that is. That way, when that referendum is needed, you're not starting that value campaign from zero. I mean, that communication is ongoing. So thank you very much. Seeing no other questions or comments, any closing thoughts on this one, or Vice President Phillips?
No, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you very much. And with that, we will turn to our last item, information items. this will be a recap of the committee's work over the year. Vice President Phillips.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Kenyanya and members of the committee. Since this is our last scheduled meeting, I thought it would be good to take a look back and highlight some of the presentations we have shared with the committee. Our first committee meeting included a brief history of the profession of student affairs. You learned about the early role of student affairs professionals as rule enforcers, which shifted over time to focus over the overall well-being of students in order to support those enrolling with more complex issues than decades before. Many of our presentations centered the student voice in order to tell the story of this experience of today's student in a more personal way. You've heard some first stories about first-generation students, online students, students who are family caregivers, those who work multiple jobs, and many whose success was attributed to utilizing of a resource provided by Student Affairs. Another presentation provided an update about mental health of our students. We shared data about the College Student Health Survey, administered on each of our campuses by Boynton Health. 27.2% of students reported receiving mental health diagnosis in the past 12 months, with 58.1% reporting diagnosed sometime in their lifetime. The good news is that all of our campuses offer a range of services to meet students' needs and preventable and policy work that has continued from the President's Initiative for Student Mental Health to the Minnesota Wellbeing Initiative for Students. This includes work to adopt the Okinawa Charter. We encouraged in discussions about student basic needs and security, which creates an awareness of current and future expansion efforts. Our collective work around student basic needs include increasing the availability of food, health, and hygiene products on all of our campuses, as well as expanding short-term emergency grants. Much of the work done by student affairs professionals across the system is done with the goal to build community and to foster a sense of belonging. Students who feel that they are a part of a community and belong on the campus are more likely to achieve their personal and career goals and graduate from our institutions. We provide examples of this important work, which occurs in the residence hall, during student organizational meetings, in on-campus jobs, and participating in campus traditions. As our last meeting, we shared with you the extensive offerings that our campuses provide to students to develop their career readiness skills. These offerings reflect modern thinking about career development, where opportunities are embedded into the ecosystem. You recall that our goal in Impact 2025 strategic plan was to exceed national career outcomes by 6%. We succeeded in reaching that goal each of the years of the plan. Currently, 91% of our employed graduates are working in positions related to or a stepping stone to their career goals. Finally, I want to share with you what has happened behind the scenes as we prepared information to share with this committee this year. While I'm connected regularly with the student affairs leaders on all of our campuses, these presentations allow for even greater collaboration, relationship building, and information sharing. New ideas have been formed and personal and professional partnerships have been strengthened. This has been an exercise in true systemness for which we are grateful. This concludes my remarks, Chair Kenyanya and members of the committee.
Thank you, Vice President Phillips. So, I mean, yeah, this being the last meeting of the committee, obviously the board has a chance to review at retreat this summer the committee structure and new leadership. We'll see what's appropriate based on board priorities. But since this might be the last, I mean, this is an opportunity to reflect on what we've been able to learn and discuss here. Chair Miron, thank you for kind of your initiative in upgrading this to a special committee based on board discussion, but ultimately it is the chair's prerogative. So very thankful that we had this opportunity. I think it's been very educational. And I think in the conversations we had, you know, the fact that this committee has not taken action items should not be seen as a lack of, you know, action or doing stuff. We've learned a lot. I think we've given some direction, or at least, you know, signaled some direction to Calvin and his collaborators. But also, you know, we expect some of this will then continue in mission fulfillment if the special committee does not continue. So just with those framing remarks, any comments from board members? Yes, Chair Mayron.
I am just struck, or maybe stunned is the correct word, and not only how much we accomplished in this, in what was presented to us in the course of this year on this, with this special committee, but more importantly, the substance of what you were reflecting is going on at the university to, in the end, to help students and to foster their success and to launch them into the future. And I just can't help but thinking about when I attended the university, and that was 1969 to 1973, so we are talking, 52 years ago, several lifetimes ago, how none of this was present at that time. I was thinking about fees. I can't remember the debate, but it was like, should we tack on a $2 student fee to address, I think it had something to do with the environment. I could be wrong, but that was it. And there was a huge debate about whether we should be doing that. And I look at now what we're doing, all basically to assist students in their success and their development. It's, as I said, it's stunning to see not only what you presented, but what's behind it all and the impact. And of course, as our presenters noted, it's clear you need more people and you need more money to be able to expand the services that you are offering and how critical they are to our student success. So kudos.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. I would agree that that's what stunned me as well. It's the response. It's not just a have to; it's also a get to. I think that's how student affairs professionals would see it, that they get to do this for our students. But it's a lot. So it's been helpful for me. I think as we discussed, as we're looking at strategic plans and as we're talking about goals and we're looking at graduation rates and that to understand how integral student affairs is to that and that to make sure that we're understanding some of the credit belongs there as we see those rates, the graduation rates go up and the test scores and and the rankings and everything like that. So thank you for the work, and it's evolving. I think maybe in another 40 years, another board will say, yeah, back in the 2020s, they only had to worry about, ABC. Who would know? And I think of the things we've discussed, maybe two that stand out. As the needs get complex, the needs are getting more complex, but it's the most basic ones that are still coming up, actually, as you speak with students. Mental health, obviously, and food and other things like that. Basic needs has been a theme, and I've shared this before, but when I was student rep, sort of ashamed of this, but I share it anyway. The student reps previously had just done a mental health as their report. So when we're in our meeting thinking of topics, someone said mental health. I was like, no way. They just did that last year. Like, let's pick something else. And I'm glad that Lauren, kind of 12 Angry Men situations, just would not give it up. And we did that report again, and it was done another couple of years. And I think most would agree that that was the kind of energy that took us into PRISM, as President Gable came on, and all the great work that was already happening, but then was elevated with that initiative. But then, we're getting close to a decade after that, and that's still what we're hearing from students. I think that, that messaging is very clear, and it's an underlying. We're not going to have all this other success if our students aren't well. So that's a big one. And food in terms of access, I would say quality is debatable. Because that, we found the Statesman, that was the student paper at UMD archives from 60 years ago, and the top two complaints were food and parking, so and it'll probably be the same in 60 years. So quality aside, access, just making sure that access is there. That's a big topic on all campuses. whether, and again, we know so much has happened. There's pantries, I think really all our campuses as well, but then also on some campuses, just looking at what we can do with external partners to make sure affordable fresh produce is available, whether, I think there's all sorts of creative ways, and I probably shouldn't be the one to start ideating here, but you can call me in a couple of months. I'll have some free time to share some ideas. But I mean, I just do think I do think the university has influence, even on things that aren't necessarily in our realm, and I would hope we would exercise some of it in this area with external partners. That is the end of my soliloquy. Should there be any other comments? You're just staring at me.
You said it all.
Okay, just looking at me. Vice President Phillips, I'll give you the last word.
I think the last thing I want to say is, first of all, I want to thanks for the opportunity to have this committee, and it gives us an opportunity to highlight what are the things that we are providing for students and things of that nature. The one thing that you'll hear from me is that, as each year goes by, the issues or whatever it may be on the next horizon, we're always continuing to think about how do we adjust to what has been given to us.
Yep.
And I think that's part of what our role and responsibility as leaders is, trying to keep that in mind as we work with students. Because you're right, what was done yesterday may not work today or into the future.
Yeah.
So it's our job to continue to do the work and do the diligence of really listening to the students at the same time, really actively engage in professional development and activities that will help us continue to think about how can we do better. And I think that's how I look at it, some of these issues. And I think if you go back and look at, I think we did an archives of issues that we're dealing with back in the early 1900s when this profession started. It's things like fraternity and sorority issues. I mean, there was a lot of those things that we still talk about today. I just want to say is that we'll continue to evolve, and we'll continue to try to do our best to make sure that we're providing the best quality experience for students so that they can have an impact in their communities, worldwide or international. That's what we're striving for. And we're partners with all the key players that are on our college campus to be able to do such a thing. Thanks.
Thank you. And I lied. Chair's prerogative. Last word will be student representative. I'm putting you on the spot. Last word for the Student Affairs Committee on behalf of all the students. Go ahead.
Okay. Reflections on behalf of all students on campus.
Yes.
To be clear, no.
20 words or less.
I will say it. I'll make this quick, probably a little bit more than 20 words, but I'm always grateful for opportunities for student voices to be heard and just for more visibility on what student life is like and what we engage with every day. And also, this has been my favorite committee to sit on personally. So I do love this committee. I love the time spent here, and I love how educational it is. As you said, there's not been like a lot of action items, but I think it is an action item to learn and to engage with stuff like this. So on behalf of students, I will say I think we're all very grateful for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service. And AVP Towell, we look forward to your super PAC that you'll be up at the Capitol with. With that, this committee is now adjourned.